It was just one sentence, spoken on a Thursday afternoon in a quiet office after most of the team had gone home. Maya had been with the company for 6 years. She was the one people turned to when something needed to be fixed quietly and well. She stayed late without complaint, caught problems before they reached anyone else's desk, and carried more than her share without ever making it feel like a burden. That week had been brutal. A vendor had failed to deliver, and Maya had spent her weekend rebuilding the entire plan so the campaign could still launch on time. She had just finished walking her manager through the revised timeline. He looked worn down, the weight of the quarter pressing on him, as she offered to take the follow-up calls with the client so he could focus on the budget meeting. He rubbed his temples and said without looking up, "I don't know why I even bother with people like you." The words landed in the space between them and stayed there. Maya felt something inside her chest go still. For a moment, she couldn't quite breathe. People like you. The phrase rearranged everything she thought she understood about her place in that room. Was she difficult? Was her loyalty invisible? Had all the late nights and silent fixes amounted to nothing more than this? A problem he wished he didn't have to carry? She nodded once. "Understood," she said, her voice smaller than she meant it to be. She walked back to her desk, sat down, and stared at her screen without seeing it. The sentence kept moving through her. She told herself he was tired. She told herself it didn't mean anything, but something had already been cut. That night, she sat at her kitchen table long after the tea had gone cold. She didn't cry. She simply sat with the words, turning them over. 6 years of showing up, of defending the team when leadership questioned them, of solving problems before they became his problems. All of it suddenly felt like it had happened to someone else. She wondered what her colleagues would say if she asked. She wondered whether she had been the only one who believed her presence mattered. In the weeks that followed, the change was quiet at first. Maya still met her deadlines. She still answered emails. But the extra step, the proactive idea, the willingness to raise her hand for the difficult work, those began to disappear. In meetings, she spoke less. When her manager asked for thoughts, she gave the shortest answer that would do. Her one-on-ones grew shorter, more careful. She stopped offering solutions before being asked for them. Her manager noticed. "You seemed a bit checked out," he said one afternoon. "Everything all right?" Maya smiled and said yes. What else was there to say? That one sentence had quietly rewritten her sense of safety in that relationship? The team felt the shift too. A project Maya had been quietly moving forward lost its momentum because she no longer carried it with the same steady conviction. Others began to absorb work she used to absorb without complaint. The corner of the office where she sat grew a little quieter, a little more guarded. 3 months later, Maya accepted an offer from another company. She gave her notice, completed a thorough handover, and on her last day, she thanked everyone with the same polite warmth she had always shown. She walked out carrying a small box and left behind more than a high-performing team member. She left behind someone who had held invisible threads of trust and initiative together for years. Her manager felt the absence in the months that followed. Deadlines that used to be caught early began to slip. Junior colleagues asked questions Maya used to answer before they reached him. In quieter moments, he found himself remembering what he had said that Thursday afternoon. He wished he could take it back, but the words were already living in the space between them, and Maya was gone. You have probably felt something like this in your own life. Not necessarily these exact words, but a sentence, a tone, a moment when someone's language told you that you were less than you believed yourself to be. It might have happened at work, with a partner, with a friend, or even with someone you love deeply. And if you are honest, you have probably been the one whose words landed harder than you intended and created a distance you didn't know how to repair. This is the hidden architecture of our relationships. Your words are never neutral. They do not simply describe what is happening between you and another person. They actively create what happens next. They shape how that person sees themselves in your presence. They set the emotional tone that either invites openness or triggers protection. They plant seeds that grow into either deeper trust or silent withdrawal. And once those seeds take root, they influence everything that follows. The effort the other person is willing to give, the honesty they are willing to risk, the future they believe is possible with you. Over the hours ahead, you will see exactly why some words have the power to destroy trust in seconds, while others can begin to rebuild what was broken. You will understand how the language you choose when you are tired or disappointed does not just describe the problem in front of you. It often creates the very response you fear receiving back. And you will discover practical ways to speak with greater care and precision, even in difficult moments, so that your words become the force that builds the relationships and the outcomes you actually want. As you listen, I invite you to bring a gentle attention to your own words, starting today. Notice what leaves your mouth when you are under pressure. Notice what you say when someone has let you down or when you are afraid of looking foolish. Notice the effect those words have on the person listening and on yourself. There is no judgment waiting here, only the quiet power of seeing clearly. Because once you see how your words are shaping the reality between you and the people who matter most, you can begin to choose them differently. One conversation at a time, one sentence at a time, and everything around you can begin to change. Chapter 1. The Invisible Thread. How your words weave the reality others live in. There is a thread that runs between you and every person you speak to. It is invisible, yet stronger and more lasting than most of us ever stop to consider. Every word you offer travels along that thread and becomes part of the fabric the other person is quietly weaving about themselves, about you, and about what feels possible between you. The words do not simply land in the ear. They move through the nervous system first. The body registers them as either a softening or a tightening, as safety or as a subtle threat, long before the mind shapes them into meaning. And then the mind goes to work, using those words as raw material to build a story that will influence how that person sees themselves and how they choose to show up with you from that moment forward. Sophie was 12 years old when her mother spoke the sentence that would follow her for decades. It happened on a Sunday evening, after a family dinner that had grown tense. Sophie's uncle had made a passing comment about her drawings, something about how they were nice for a hobby. Sophie had felt the sting and tried to explain why it mattered to her. Her voice had risen. She had become visibly upset. Her mother, standing at the sink with her back to the room, tired from the long day and wanting the evening to settle, turned and said with a sigh, "You've always been the sensitive one. You need to learn to toughen up." The words were not spoken in anger. They carried the weary tone of someone who simply wanted peace. But they landed inside Sophie like a stone dropped into deep water. From that evening onward, something shifted in how Sophie experienced her own emotions. Whenever she felt hurt or overwhelmed, a quiet voice would rise inside her. "You're being too sensitive again." She began to apologize for her feelings before she even named them. In school, when friends excluded her or spoke carelessly, she swallowed her reactions and told herself she was overreacting. Years later, in her first serious relationship, when her partner dismissed her needs or spoke to her with irritation, she stayed silent. She had learned to treat her own sensitivity as a flaw that required management rather than a signal worth honoring. She chose partners who needed her to be smaller. She became skilled at shrinking her emotional presence, so she would not be too much. Now, in her early 40s, Sophie still catches herself minimizing what she feels. She still hesitates before speaking up in close relationships. And when she does name her experience, there is often a small apology attached, as if she must first ask permission to have an inner life. One offhand sentence, spoken by a tired parent who loved her, had become woven into the deepest layers of her self-understanding. It shaped the relationships she entered, the boundaries she failed to set, and the quiet belief that her inner world was something she needed to edit before offering it to anyone else. Now consider what happens when the thread carries something entirely different. Marcus was 28 and working in a technology company where he had been passed over for promotion twice. He was competent and reliable, but he rarely spoke up in meetings unless directly asked. He assumed his contributions were ordinary. His manager, a woman named Elena who had been quietly observing him for months, saw something else. One afternoon, after a difficult client call that Marcus had handled with steady calm while others grew flustered, Elena asked him to stay behind for a moment. "I've been watching you," she said. "When everything gets chaotic, you don't just stay calm yourself. You make the people around you feel like the problems are solvable. I believe you have what it takes to lead the next product cycle. I'm going to put your name forward, and I want you to know I'll support you in every way I can." Marcus later described that conversation as the first time anyone at work had ever spoken to him, as if his presence carried real weight. The sentence did not simply praise his performance. It offered him a new story about who he was capable of becoming. In the weeks that followed, he began to speak more readily in meetings. He took initiative on projects he would previously have deferred to others. When challenges arose, he remembered Elena's words and felt a steadiness that had not been available to him before. 18 months later, he was promoted to lead a small team, and he became known inside the company as someone who brought both competence and a quiet steadiness that helped others do their best work. One sentence of genuine belief had unlocked a version of Marcus that had been waiting beneath years of self-doubt. You see, every conversation you enter is an act of co-creation. You are not merely exchanging information or expressing your own thoughts. You are offering the other person pieces of narrative that they will use, consciously or unconsciously, to construct their understanding of themselves in relation to you. When your words carry invalidation, even unintentionally, the other person often begins to doubt their own reality. They wonder whether they are too sensitive, too demanding, too emotional, or somehow misreading the situation. That doubt does not remain contained within the moment. It seeps into how they show up with you and with others. It shapes what they believe they are allowed to feel and what they believe they are capable of bringing to the relationship. But when your words offer sincere acknowledgement, when they communicate in effect, "I see what you are experiencing and it makes sense to me," something different occurs. The other person's nervous system registers a measure of safety. They feel more real to themselves. And from that place of greater internal solidity, they often become more capable, more open, and more willing to bring their full presence into the space between you. This is why the ordinary sentences you speak every day deserve a different kind of attention than most of us give them. You are quietly engaged in world building. With each conversation, you are adding threads to the invisible fabric that another person will live inside when they think of themselves in relation to you. You are shaping the story they carry about their own worth, their own voice, and their own possibilities. You might begin to notice this in small, ordinary moments. The way you respond when someone shares a disappointment. The tone you use when you are tired and someone asks for your attention. The words you choose when you are frustrated with a colleague or a family member. Each of these moments is not neutral. Each one either reinforces an old story inside the other person or offers them new material from which to build something different. The thread is always present. The only question is what you are choosing to weave with it. And once you begin to see this clearly, even the most routine interactions start to feel like something more sacred and more consequential than they once appeared. Chapter 2: One Wrong Word. The Anatomy of a Relationship Disaster. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday evening in October. Anna and Michael had been married for 11 years. They had built a life together that looked stable from the outside. A small house with a garden Anna tended, careers that paid the bills, a rhythm of weekends, and shared friends. But for the past year, something had been quietly thinning between them. Anna had begun to notice how rarely they truly looked at each other anymore. She had started therapy 6 months earlier, not because the marriage was in crisis, but because she wanted to understand why she so often felt lonely, even when Michael was in the same room. That Tuesday, she had cooked his favorite meal. She had lit a candle on the table, something small she used to do when they were first married. After they ate, she took a breath and spoke carefully, trying not to sound like she was accusing him of anything. "I've been feeling like we're moving in parallel lately," she said. "I miss actually talking to you. Not about schedules or bills, but about us. I miss feeling like you still see me." Michael had come home tired. A difficult project at work had been consuming him for weeks. He heard her words as another demand on an already depleted system. He set his fork down and looked at her with an expression she had never seen before, a mixture of exhaustion and something colder. "You know what?" he said. "I'm tired of this. No matter what I do, it's never enough for you. You always find something that's missing. You've turned into someone who's impossible to make happy." The sentence landed between them like a door slamming shut. Anna felt her face go still. For a moment, she simply looked at him, as if she needed to make sure she had heard correctly. Then, something in her eyes changed. The light that had been there when she lit the candle went out. She nodded once, very small, and said, "Okay." She stood up, cleared her plate, and went into the kitchen. Michael stayed at the table. Neither of them spoke for the rest of the evening. In the weeks that followed, Anna became quieter in the house. She still did the things that needed doing: laundry, groceries, the garden, but she stopped offering the small openings she used to create for connection. She no longer asked how his day had really been. She stopped reaching for his hand when they watched television. When he came home late, she no longer waited up. She went to bed earlier, turned her back to his side of the mattress, and lay awake listening to him move through the rooms downstairs. Michael noticed the change, though he told himself it was probably for the best. The house felt calmer. There were fewer conversations that left him feeling like he had failed at something he didn't fully understand. He began staying at the office a little later on some evenings. On weekends, he found reasons to be in the garage or on his phone. The distance that had been gradual before now moved faster, as if Anna's absence had given it permission to spread. 6 months after that Tuesday, Anna stopped mentioning the marriage in her therapy sessions. When her therapist asked how things were at home, she said simply, "We're fine. We don't fight." What she did not say was that she had begun to imagine what it would feel like to live alone. She had started putting small amounts of money into a separate account, not because she had made a decision, but because some part of her needed to know she could. She still loved Michael in the way you love someone who has shared your life for more than a decade, but she no longer believed he saw her as someone worth knowing deeply. His sentence had become a permanent reference point inside her. Whenever she felt the old impulse to reach for him, she heard it again. "You've turned into someone who's impossible to make happy." 2 years after that evening, Anna asked for a separation. It was not dramatic. She simply said one morning, while they were both getting ready for work, that she thought they should live apart for a while and see what became clear. Michael was surprised. He had thought the silence between them was something they had both agreed to. He asked her why now, after all this time. Anna looked at him for a long moment, and then said, very quietly, "Because I don't want to spend the rest of my life trying to prove that I'm not impossible to love." Michael still thinks about that Tuesday sometimes. He has tried to remember exactly what he said, and he can. The words are still available to him. What he cannot remember is why he chose them. He has wondered, in the years since Anna moved out, whether there was a moment he could have taken them back. He never did, and the marriage that had once felt like the center of his life became something he now refers to as "my first marriage," as if it belonged to a different version of himself. You might be wondering what made those particular words so destructive. They were not shouted. They were not cruel in the way we usually imagine cruelty, but they carried several qualities that turned them into something from which the relationship never recovered. First, they attacked Anna's identity, rather than addressing the moment. Michael did not say he felt overwhelmed or that he needed space. He told her she had become a different kind of person, someone impossible to please. That is a far deeper wound than a complaint about a single evening. It told her that the self she was bringing into the relationship was fundamentally flawed. Second, the language was global. You always find something that's missing. You've turned into someone so and so. Those words erased any possibility of nuance. They turned a specific feeling into a permanent character trait. When someone hears that their way of being is fixed and problematic, their nervous system often moves into protection rather than connection. Repair becomes much harder because the problem has been defined as who they are, not what happened between you. Third, the timing and the underlying assumption mattered. Anna had spoken from vulnerability. She had offered a tender truth about missing him. Michael's response did not meet that vulnerability. It reframed her longing as a character defect. And beneath the words was an assumption that her emotional needs were excessive, that the problem lived inside her rather than in the space between them. When that assumption goes unspoken, but is acted upon, it creates a profound loneliness in the person who has been labeled as too much. Some sentences function like emotional landmines. They sit in the relationship long after they are spoken. The other person steps on them again and again in quiet moments. When they consider reaching out, when they consider being honest, when they consider staying. The explosion has already happened. What remains is the slow work of deciding whether the ground is still safe to walk on. You have probably felt the echo of a sentence like this in your own life. Perhaps not these exact words, but something that told you in one way or another that your presence or your needs had become a problem for someone you loved. Or perhaps you have been the one who spoke words you later wished you could gather back into your mouth. The strange and sobering truth is that we rarely intend to plant these landmines. We speak from our own exhaustion, our own fear of not being enough, our own accumulated disappointments. But once the words are spoken, they belong to the relationship as much as they belong to us. And some of them are difficult, if not impossible, to remove. This is why the ordinary sentences you speak when you are tired or defensive deserve a different quality of attention than most of us give them. You are not simply expressing a feeling in the moment. You are offering the other person a story about who they are in your eyes. And that story has the power to either keep the thread between you intact or to cut it in a way that takes years or a lifetime to repair. Chapter 3. The Boomerang We Throw. How our words shape their response to us. There is a strange and consistent pattern in the way relationships unfold. The words you speak do not simply land and disappear. They travel outward and then return, shaped by the response they have created in the other person. It is almost as if every sentence you offer is a boomerang. You throw it with a certain energy and assumption, and what comes back often carries the very quality you sent out, sometimes softened, sometimes sharpened, but rarely neutral. Consider what happened inside a project team led by a manager named Thomas. The team had been struggling with a complex client implementation that was running behind schedule. Thomas was under pressure from his own leadership. He cared about the work and about his people, but in recent months, the stress had narrowed his view. He began to see the delays as evidence that his team lacked urgency and ownership. One Friday afternoon, he called everyone into the conference room. He stood at the head of the table with his arms crossed and said, "I've been looking at the status reports, and I have to be honest. It feels like I'm the only one who's actually worried about whether this project succeeds. Some of you are treating deadlines like suggestions. I need people who are committed, not people who are waiting to be managed. If that's not you, I need to know now." The room went very quiet. Jordan, one of the more experienced members of the team, had been planning to raise a technical blocker that was causing the delays. After Thomas spoke, he decided to keep it to himself. He told himself it wasn't worth the risk of being seen as someone who was making excuses. Other team members nodded and took notes, but no one offered new ideas or asked clarifying questions. The energy in the room had shifted from collaborative problem solving to careful self-protection. In the weeks that followed, the team did exactly what Thomas had asked for, and nothing more. They completed the tasks that were explicitly assigned. They stopped flagging potential problems early, because doing so had begun to feel like volunteering for criticism. When Thomas asked in meetings whether anyone saw risks ahead, the answers were short and safe. The project continued to slip, but the slips were now hidden longer. Thomas felt his original frustration confirmed. He told a colleague over coffee that he wished he had a team that took more initiative. What he did not see was that his words had created the very conditions in which initiative felt unsafe. Now consider what unfolded in another team facing similar pressure. Elena had recently stepped into a leadership role with a group that had also missed several milestones. She inherited the same kind of stress Thomas had carried, but her first instinct was different. In her opening meeting with the team, she said, "I know this project has been difficult, and that some of the delays have been outside anyone's control. I also know that each of you has been working hard under circumstances that haven't always been clear. I'm not here to assign blame. I'm here because I believe this team can turn this around, and I want to understand what you need from me so we can do it together. What's actually getting in the way right now?" The difference in the room was immediate. People began to speak. One person described a dependency on another department that had never been escalated. Another admitted they had been unclear about priorities and had been afraid to ask. A third offered a suggestion for a small process change that would save several hours each week. The conversation lasted longer than Elena had planned, but when it ended, the energy in the room felt different. People left with a sense that their perspective mattered and that the problem belonged to all of them rather than to any single person's failure. Over the next 2 months, the same team that had been missing deadlines began to hit them. Not because Elena had worked harder than Thomas, but because the reality she had offered them through her words was one in which they were capable partners rather than problems to be managed. They responded to that offered reality by bringing more of their intelligence and effort forward. The project recovered, and Elena found herself with a team that now brought solutions instead of waiting for instructions. You see, the people around you are constantly, and often unconsciously, reading the reality your words are offering them. When your language carries the assumption that they are untrustworthy, disengaged, or incapable, they often begin to behave in ways that require less trust and less engagement from you. They protect themselves. They offer less of their full thinking. They wait to be told, rather than stepping forward. And then the pattern you feared is confirmed, not because your original judgment was accurate, but because your words helped create the conditions in which that judgment became true. The reverse movement is equally reliable. When your words communicate respect, genuine curiosity, and a clear belief in the other person's capability, they often respond by offering more of what you value. They share information earlier. They take initiative because it feels safe to do so. They meet the positive expectation you have placed in front of them. This is not magic. It is the simple mechanics of human relationship. We tend to live into the story that is being told about us, especially when that story comes from someone whose opinion carries weight in our daily life. You might recognize this pattern in your own experience. Think of a conversation in which you spoke from frustration or accusation and received back exactly the defensiveness or withdrawal you were afraid of. Or think of a moment when you chose different language, when you spoke from respect or from a genuine desire to understand, and watched the other person open in a way that surprised you. The boomerang is always in motion. The only real question is what quality of energy and assumption you are choosing to throw. This is why changing the words you speak can be one of the fastest ways to change the relationship dynamics you keep experiencing. You are not simply describing what is happening between you and another person. You are participating in the creation of what happens next. And once you begin to see this clearly, even difficult conversations start to feel less like battles to be won and more like opportunities to offer a reality worth responding to. Chapter 4: Precision, Empathy, and Power: The Skills of Reality Building Speech. Awareness of what our words can damage is only the beginning. The real question is what we choose to say instead when emotions are high and connection feels fragile. The good news is that speaking in ways that build reality rather than erode it is not a rare talent. It is a set of learnable skills that become natural with practice. These skills do not require you to be perfect or to suppress what is true. They simply ask you to be more precise about what you actually want and more protective of the other person's dignity while you say it. Consider a conversation between partners. Clara comes home after a long day and sees the kitchen still in disarray from breakfast. In the past, she might have said, "You always leave everything for me. It's like my time doesn't matter to you at all." The words would have landed as an attack on Ben's character. He would have felt the familiar sting of being seen as selfish or careless, and the evening would have tightened into distance or argument. Instead, Clara pauses for a moment in the doorway. She takes a breath and says, "Ben, I want us to feel like we're sharing this life more evenly. When I walk in and see the dishes still sitting here after I've been working all day, I start to feel invisible and alone in this. Would you be willing to clear the kitchen before I get home on the days I work late? It would help me feel like we're on the same team again." You can feel the difference. She named the shared intention first. She separated the behavior from any judgment of who Ben is as a person. She made a clear, specific request instead of a global complaint. And she spoke about the future they both want, a sense of being on the same team. The words still carried honesty about her experience, but they left room for Ben to respond as a partner rather than as someone under attack. The same shift appears in other settings. At work, a manager named Ellie once gave feedback to a team member whose report had missed several key details. The old version would have sounded like this: "This isn't good enough. I'm disappointed. You need to pay more attention to what matters." The employee would have left the meeting feeling smaller and more guarded, and the next report would likely have carried the same problems, only hidden better. Instead, Ellie said, "I know this project matters to both of us, and I want the work we put out to reflect the care we both bring. When some of the details were missing, it created extra work for the client team and for you. Can we look at what got in the way this time and talk about what support would help the next one land cleanly? I'm on your side in this." Again, the pattern holds. She named the shared intention. She protected the person's dignity while still being direct about the impact. She moved the conversation toward the future they both wanted, rather than leaving the other person stuck in a story of failure. Even with children, the difference is immediate and lasting. A father watching his 8-year-old daughter dissolve into tears after losing a board game might once have said, "You're being too sensitive. It's just a game. You need to learn to lose gracefully." The child would have heard that her feelings themselves were a problem, and over time, she might have learned to hide them or to turn them into something sharper. Instead, the father kneels down and says, "I can see how much this mattered to you, and it makes sense that you're disappointed. I hate seeing you this upset. Can you tell me what the hardest part was? I'm right here with you." The child still feels the loss, but she no longer feels alone inside it. She learns that her emotions are welcome and that her father is someone she can bring them to. These small shifts in language do not erase difficulty. They change what becomes possible inside the difficulty. Rachel and Daniel had been married for 9 years. They loved each other, but years of accumulated frustration had left them speaking in shorthand that often wounded. Rachel had grown sharp when she felt unseen. Daniel had grown quiet and withdrawn when he felt criticized. After one particularly painful argument, in which Rachel had said, "You never really show up for me," Daniel had looked at her with an expression she had never seen before and said, "I don't know how much longer I can keep trying if this is what trying looks like to you." Something in Rachel broke open that night. She realized she did not want to keep creating the very distance she feared. She began, slowly and imperfectly, to practice speaking differently. In the weeks that followed, she caught herself before old patterns took over. When Daniel came home late again without texting, instead of saying, "You don't even think about how worried I get," she said, "Daniel, I want us to feel connected even when the day gets messy. When I don't hear from you, I start imagining the worst, and then I get angry. Would you be willing to send a quick message when you know you'll be late? It would help me stay on your side, instead of against you." The first few times, Daniel still braced for criticism, but the new language did not require him to defend himself. Over time, he began to answer more openly. One evening, he said, almost surprised, "I didn't realize how much that mattered to you." Rachel also began naming what she wanted to create together. On a quiet Saturday morning, she said, "I miss how we used to talk about our days without it turning into a problem to solve. I'd love for us to have more of those conversations again. What would help that feel possible for you?" Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I think I've been afraid that if I tell you what's actually on my mind, you'll find more reasons I'm letting you down." The honesty that emerged from that single sentence began to change the air between them. None of these conversations were dramatic. There was no single turning point where everything was repaired. But over 6 weeks, the texture of their daily life began to shift. Rachel noticed that Daniel lingered in the kitchen after dinner, instead of disappearing into his phone. Daniel noticed that Rachel's voice carried less edge when she asked for something. They still had hard moments, but the hard moments no longer felt like proof that the relationship itself was broken. They felt like something they were facing together. You do not need to master every technique at once. You only need to begin choosing, more often than before, to speak with the precision and care that protects the connection you actually want. These ways of speaking are not about being soft or avoiding truth. They are about being clear enough and respectful enough that the other person can actually hear what you are saying, and that both of you can move toward the future you long for, rather than remaining trapped in the patterns you fear. The skills are ordinary. The results, when practiced, are quietly extraordinary. And they begin the moment you decide that the next sentence you speak will be one that builds, rather than one that merely reacts. Chapter 5. When Words Wound. The Art of Repair and Reconnection. Even when we try to speak with care, we will sometimes get it wrong. A sentence spoken in exhaustion, fear, or old habit can land like an arrow. The wound is real. What happens next determines whether the relationship grows smaller or stronger. The ability to repair is not a soft skill. It is one of the most powerful acts of courage and love we can offer another person. Sienna and Daniel had been together for 8 years and had a 5-year-old son. Sienna worked long hours in a demanding job. Daniel had taken on more of the daily parenting, so she could keep advancing in her career. Most of the time, they respected what the other was carrying. But one Thursday evening, everything that had been held together with good intentions came loose. Their son had been sick for 3 nights in a row. Sienna had barely slept. She came home to a house that still needed dinner and a load of laundry that had been sitting since morning. Daniel was on the floor with their son, trying to coax him into eating something. When Sienna walked in and saw the dishes from breakfast still in the sink, something inside her snapped. She stood in the doorway and said, "I don't know how you can sit there playing while everything is falling apart. I'm out there killing myself every day, and I come home to this. Sometimes it feels like I'm the only adult in this house." The words hung in the air. Daniel looked up at her. His face went still in the way it does when someone has been hit somewhere they weren't expecting. He didn't argue. He simply nodded, stood up, and began clearing the dishes without speaking. Their son watched them both with wide eyes. That night, Daniel was quieter than usual. He read their son his story, put him to bed, and then went to bed himself without the usual conversation they sometimes managed at the end of hard days. Sienna lay awake beside him. She knew she had crossed something. The next morning, she tried to fix it the way she had always tried before. Over coffee, she said, "I'm sorry about last night. I didn't mean it the way it came out. I was just so tired." Daniel nodded again and said it was fine, but something in his voice told her it was not fine. Over the next few days, he remained polite, helpful, and distant. He no longer reached for her hand when they passed in the kitchen. When she tried to talk about work, he listened, but offered little in return. The house felt heavier. Their son began asking why mommy and daddy weren't laughing anymore. Sienna realized her first attempt at repair had not actually repaired anything. It had been an apology for her discomfort more than for the pain she had caused. She had minimized the wound by saying she didn't mean it, as if that erased the words Daniel had heard and the meaning he had taken from them. 3 days after the original moment, she asked Daniel if they could talk after their son was asleep. She was nervous in a way she had not been with him in years. When they sat down at the kitchen table, she took a breath and spoke more slowly than she usually did. "Daniel," she said, "I've been thinking about what I said the other night. I see now how those words landed on you. They told you that I don't see how much you carry here every day, and that I think you're failing at something that matters deeply to both of us. That's not what I believe, and I'm truly sorry for the pain I caused. I was overwhelmed and scared, and I let it turn into an attack on you, instead of telling you I needed help. I hate that I made you feel small in your own home. I want us to feel like we're on the same side again, even on the hardest days. Can we talk about what would help both of us feel less alone in this?" Daniel was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick. He told her that the sentence had sat with him every hour since she had said it. He had started questioning whether he was enough as a father and as a partner. He had begun to wonder if she would be better off without him carrying so much of the daily load. Hearing her name the exact impact, that she had made him feel small and unseen in the very place he was trying hardest, allowed something in him to soften. He had not known how much he needed her to see the wound she had created. They talked for almost 2 hours that night. Sienna did not rush to explain herself again. She stayed with what her words had done to him. Daniel, for the first time in days, let himself say how heavy the last few months had felt and how much he had been afraid to tell her. By the end of the conversation, something had shifted. The air between them felt different, not perfect, but honest again. In the weeks that followed, they began to speak earlier when either of them felt the load becoming too much. Daniel started asking for help without apology. Sienna started noticing and naming what he was carrying, instead of only what was still undone. Their son stopped asking why they were quiet. The repair did not erase the original wound, but it did something more important. It taught both of them that their relationship could survive a moment of real hurt. It showed their son, without anyone needing to explain it, that people who love each other can make mistakes and then find their way back to each other with honesty rather than defensiveness. And it gave Sienna a new kind of confidence. Not that she would never wound again, but that she now knew how to meet the wound when it happened. You will sometimes speak words you later wish you could take back. That is part of being human in a relationship. What matters most is not the perfection of your speech, but the courage you bring to the repair. A true repair does not begin with, "I didn't mean it that way," or "you're too sensitive." It begins with a willingness to see the impact your words actually had on the other person and to name that impact without defense. It sounds like, "I see how my words landed on you, and I'm truly sorry for the pain I caused." Those words often carry more healing power than the original wounding words had destructive power because they directly addressed the place that was injured. They restored dignity. They reestablish safety. They say, without needing to say it, that the relationship matters more to you than being right. The next time you realize you have wounded someone you care about, you might try speaking from that place. You do not need a perfect script. You only need enough courage to turn toward the hurt you created and to let the other person know you see it. Every time you do this, you strengthen the thread between you. You teach both of you that connection does not require perfection. It only requires the willingness to come back to each other when you have lost your way. And that willingness, offered consistently, becomes one of the deepest forms of love a relationship can know. Chapter 6: The Daily Practice of Conscious Creation, Habits of Master Communicators. Becoming someone whose words consistently create the relationships and outcomes you truly want is not a single decision or a sudden transformation. It is a quiet, daily practice. The people who seem to move through life with a kind of relational grace are rarely perfect. They have simply learned to treat their speech as something they tend with the same steady attention a gardener gives to soil and seed. Over time, that attention changes who they are. Samuel had been married to Anna for 12 years when he realized the distance between them had grown wider than he wanted to admit. They still loved each other. They still managed the logistics of 2 children and 2 careers. But conversations had become shorter, more careful, and more likely to end in one of them withdrawing. One evening, after the children were asleep, Anna said something that stayed with him. "I feel like I have to edit myself around you now. I don't know when that started." Samuel heard the weariness in her voice and felt something shift inside him. He did not want to be the person whose presence required editing. He began, without announcing it to anyone, to treat his speech as a daily practice, rather than something that simply happened to him. One of the first things he started doing was setting a clear intention before conversations that mattered. Before talking with Anna about money, or the children's schedules, or anything that had tension attached to it, he would pause in another room for 30 seconds and ask himself what he actually wanted to create. Not what he wanted to prove or win, but what kind of reality he wanted to exist between them afterward. Sometimes, the intention was simple. "I want us to feel like we're on the same team when this conversation ends." Other times, it was more specific. "I want Anna to know I see how much she carries, and that I'm willing to carry more of it." Naming the intention changed the tone of his voice before he even spoke. He also began using what he privately called his one-sentence check. When he felt stress rising, in a meeting at work, in the car with the children fighting in the back seat, or when Anna said something that triggered an old defensiveness, he trained himself to pause for one sentence before answering. The question he asked himself was simple. What reality am I about to create with my next words? The pause was rarely more than a few seconds, but it was often enough to keep him from throwing the old sentences that had once felt automatic. He noticed that when he skipped the check, he almost always regretted what came out. When he remembered it, the conversation usually went somewhere more useful. In the evenings, after the children were in bed, Samuel began keeping a small notebook by his chair. He did not write long reflections. He simply noted 1 or 2 conversations from the day and what reality they had created. On a difficult day, he might write, "Told Anna the house felt chaotic when I walked in. She went quiet for the rest of the evening. I created distance instead of partnership." On a better day, he might write, "Before asking her about the weekend plans, I said I wanted us to have some time that felt like ours. She smiled and suggested we take the kids to the lake. The conversation felt light." Over months, the notebook became a quiet teacher. He began to see patterns he had never noticed when his words were simply flying out of him. When he did speak in ways that created hurt, and he still did, because old habits do not disappear overnight, he practiced repair as something ordinary rather than dramatic. Instead of waiting days or hoping the moment would pass, he would find Anna later that evening or the next morning and say, "I want to repair something I said earlier. When I told you the house felt chaotic, I think it landed as criticism of how you manage everything. That wasn't what I meant, and I'm sorry for the weight that added to your day. I want us to feel like we're figuring this out together." The first few times, Anna looked surprised. Over time, she began to meet his repairs with her own honesty instead of guardedness. Repair stopped feeling like an emergency and started feeling like part of how they stayed close. Slowly, Samuel also began building a personal vocabulary of phrases that seemed to protect dignity while still allowing honesty. He noticed which sentences tended to open Anna rather than close her. He started using more of, "I want us to feel," and "help me understand what this is like for you," and "what would support you right now," instead of the older patterns of, "you always," or "why can't you just." He did not force these phrases. He simply paid attention to which ones created more connection and let those become his new defaults. 9 months after that evening, when Anna had said she felt like she had to edit herself, something had shifted in their home that neither of them had forced. Anna spoke more freely again. She laughed more easily. When difficult topics arose, they still felt hard, but they no longer felt dangerous. Samuel noticed that his children had become calmer around him as well. They brought him problems instead of hiding them. At work, his team began to do the same. People offered ideas earlier and admitted mistakes without the old fear of his reaction. Samuel had not set out to change his marriage or his leadership. He had simply decided to practice speaking as someone who wanted to create connection rather than defend himself. The relationships around him had responded to that new reality. You might be wondering whether this kind of change requires an unusual amount of discipline or self-awareness. It does not. What it requires is the willingness to treat your speech as something you are actively shaping, rather than something that simply happens to you. The habits themselves are ordinary. A 30-second intention before a conversation that matters. A single internal question when stress rises. A few lines written at the end of the day. A repair offered the same day, instead of left to harden. A growing collection of phrases that have proven themselves trustworthy. Over time, these small acts do something deeper than improve individual conversations. They change your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is occasionally thoughtful and occasionally reactive. You begin to see yourself as someone who is becoming a conscious creator of the emotional realities you live inside. That identity, once it takes root, becomes self-reinforcing. You notice more quickly when you have slipped. You feel less shame about the slip because you know how to return. And the people around you begin to trust that even when you get it wrong, you will not leave the wound unattended. This is the quiet promise of daily practice. You do not have to become perfect with words. You only have to become someone who keeps returning to the intention of creating connection, safety, and dignity, one sentence, one repair, one day at a time. And in that returning, the relationships you most care about begin to reflect the speaker you are steadily becoming. Conclusion. You have walked through the past hour with stories of words that cut and words that healed, of relationships that unraveled from a single sentence and relationships that were slowly rewoven through steady, conscious choice. You have seen how words land in the nervous system before they reach the mind, how they become the raw material from which others build their story of themselves and of you, and how the language you choose when you are tired or afraid often creates the very distance or defensiveness you fear. You have also seen that repair is always possible, that daily practice turns awareness into identity, and that the speaker you are becoming is more powerful than the patterns you inherited. The transformation you have been invited into is not about becoming flawless with words. It is about moving from someone who speaks and hopes for the best to someone who understands that every sentence is an act of creation. You are no longer at the mercy of automatic reactions. You are stepping into the quiet authority of a person who knows that their words shape the emotional reality between them and everyone they meet. Imagine what becomes possible when this understanding lives in your body rather than only in your mind. In your closest relationship, the conversations that once ended in silence or resentment now end with both people feeling more seen and more safe. At work, the team that once offered only what was asked begins to bring ideas, warnings, and effort they had been holding back, because the space you create with your words tells them their full presence is welcome. With your children or your parents, old cycles of misunderstanding begin to loosen. New patterns of honesty and tenderness take their place. And inside you, a different kind of steadiness grows, the deep knowing that you carry in every ordinary conversation, the ability to build trust, to heal what has been wounded, and to invite the best from the people around you. This week, I invite you to choose one relationship or one kind of conversation and begin. Perhaps it is the way you speak with your partner when the day has worn you thin. Perhaps it is how you offer feedback or ask for what you need at work. Perhaps it is the words you choose with your child when frustration rises in both of you. You do not need to change everything. You only need to bring one new thread of intention into that one place. Set a clear intention before the conversation. Pause for the one-sentence check when stress rises. Offer repair the same day if you slip. Notice what reality your words are creating and adjust with gentleness rather than judgment. The one word that saves everything is not a magic phrase found in a book. It is the word you choose to speak when you remember that your words are never neutral. It is the word that emerges when you pause long enough to ask what kind of reality you want to create in this moment with this person you care about. That single word, offered with awareness, carries more healing and creative power than most of us ever realize. You are not defined by the sentences you spoke last month or last year. You are the one who gets to decide what kind of thread you will weave into the fabric of your relationships from this conversation forward. Every time you choose with care, you strengthen not only the connection between you and another person, but the quiet confidence inside yourself that you can be trusted with words, and that the people you love can be trusted with your honesty. The conversations ahead of you are not neutral ground. They are the living place where you will practice becoming the speaker you are capable of being. Walk into them with the gentle power of someone who knows their words matter, and who has discovered they have the capacity to make them matter in the direction of connection, dignity, and the future they actually want to live inside. That is the journey. That is the quiet power you now carry. And it begins with the next sentence you speak.